ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaste, my dear friends. This is a very important video about the nature of the Atma. In our Upanishads, Shastras and Vedas, so much has been written, described and explained about the Atma, the nature of Atma, consciousness, the real self. Some of the recent sages like Swami Vivekananda, Bhagwan Ramakrishna Paramhansa, Maharishi Ramana and Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba, they have revealed the nature of Atma in very clear terms. Especially Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba in his discourses always gave utmost importance to the importance of knowledge of Atma. Everyone takes life so much for granted, but what precisely is life? What is the difference between a living body and a corpse? Religious texts often talk about spirit or soul. What exactly are they? Are they material or non-material in nature? Are they in any way related to the Atma? Is there a life after death? Is there any rebirth? If there is rebirth, why does it occur? Is there any end to the cycle of births and deaths? These undoubtedly are questions that must have at one time or the other passed through the minds of many readers, especially while pursuing Bhagwan Baba's divine discourses. This chapter offers a comprehensive discussion on the Atma based largely on Swami's teachings. While it might not answer all the doubts of the reader, it is hoped, enable everyone to have a good feel for what the Atma is all about, as also the answers to at least some of the questions posed about. The subject dealt with here is not an easy one, but being important, it should not be dismissed. On the contrary, it requires much contemplation as well as supplementary reading. As far as the latter is concerned, the storehouse of science literature is particularly recommended. If there is one theme that recurs again and again in Swami's divine discourses, it is the Atma. In the Gita, Krishna introduces Arjuna to the Atma right in the beginning and thereafter imparts to him in brief the knowledge of the Atma, Atma Jnana. What precisely is this Atma? What is its nature? Why is it so important? Where do we find it? And how do we find it? The three states of consciousness. According to the text of ancient Hindu philosophy, the Upanishads or Vedanta, as they are collectively referred to, a human being can exist in one of the three states. The waking state, which requires no explanation, the dream state, which occurs when one is asleep, and the deep sleep or the dreamless sleep state. Physicists give great importance to the first, dismiss the second, and are simply not bothered about the third. Psychologists are not so brash and do give importance to the dream state, but do not perhaps regard the deep sleep state as anything other than a good and refreshing experience. The Vedantin or the scholar of Vedanta accepts all the three states as a part of valid human experience and then proceeds to inquire into their meaning. The waking state is characterized by one's awareness of what is going on around oneself. Such an awareness is made possible by the senses which first gather information and then transmit them to the brain where cognition occurs. This capacity for cognition is often spoken of as consciousness, and it is this consciousness which is switched off by a head injury, for example, or by an anesthetic. The dream state is, in its own way, quite remarkable. Firstly, everything one sees during a dream not only seems extraordinarily real while the dream lasts, but is created entirely by the mind. A person may not be able to draw even a simple object, yet her mind is able to create automobiles, aeroplanes, and skyscrapers. Indeed, even illiterate persons, when they dream, create for themselves visions of exotic objects. Thus, the incredible creativity of the mind comes into its own during the dream state. Secondly, during a dream, the person has absolutely no feeling about the existence of the world experienced during the waking state. Thirdly, one experiences an entire universe, but it is all actually inside. And lastly, the dream state experiences transcend space and time as compared to those experienced during the waking state. Swami often illustrates this by saying that while dreaming, the person continues to be in bed but may yet experience a journey from Puttaparthi to New Zealand or America or whatever. Further, while the dream itself may last only for a couple of minutes, the dreamer can experience a perfectly normal journey lasting several hours as one does in the waking state. The ability to create, as it were, its own space and time illustrates once again the astonishing power of the mind. Hardcore rationalists would laughingly dismiss the dream experience as mere imagination, but while the dream lasts, it is all so very real. Indeed, people laugh, cry, feel pain, and even scream in terror while dreaming. By way of underscoring this point, Swami sometimes narrates a story relating to Emperor Janaka, which briefly goes as follows. One day, Janaka returns late in the evening to his chambers after a taxing day at court involving the affairs of the state. His queen, who had been waiting for him, welcomes him and asks him to freshen up for dinner. But Janka, exhausted as he is, slouches into a chair and dozes off for a few minutes. During his nap, he has a disturbing dream from which he wakes up with a start. As he looks around, the scene is very different from what he was seeing a short while ago. No forest, no tigers chasing, etc. Puzzled, he begins to mutter, was that real or is this real? The queen tries to persuade him to wash up and get ready for dinner, but Janka continues to remain in a stupor, constantly repeating his question. Doctors are summoned, but it does not help. Ultimately, says Vasishtha, the preceptor is requested to come, and when he arrives, Janka is still asking the same question. Smiling, Vasishtha places his hand on Janka's shoulder and says, O king, both are not real, only you are real. Vasishtha was, of course, referring to the Atma. Consider now the deep sleep state in which there is no dream and the mind is absolutely still. What about the senses? They are all withdrawn into the mind, as Sale says. Upon the couch, the body lay wrapped up in the depth of slumber. Its feathers were fixed and meaningless, yet animal life was there. One nice thing about a deep sleep is that when one wakes up, one feels thoroughly refreshed. Is that all there is to the deep sleep state? While scientists would say yes, a Vedantin would raise the question, while you were fast asleep, your consciousness was totally dormant. How then do you know that you were sound asleep? One can hem and saw something by way of a reply, but it would not be convincing. A Vedantin, on the other hand, would firmly declare that although what we call consciousness was dormant, there was actually a superior consciousness that was alert and alive to the experience of deep sleep. The purpose of looking at experiences in all the three states together now becomes clear, it being merely to draw attention to the existence of what has been referred to above as superior consciousness. Thus, a human being has, so to say, two layers of consciousness, a primary layer and a secondary one, as illustrated in figure 1. Secondary consciousness is the one which is active in the waking state and is what one normally referred to as consciousness. Schematic illustration of the two types of awareness that operate in a human being. The basic substratum, which has been variously referred to as a prajna, primary consciousness, superior consciousness, etc., is related to the I consciousness. The secondary consciousness is merely a reflection of the primary and being body oriented as responsible for the I feeling or ego ahankaram. In the dream state, this secondary consciousness is only partially active, but in the deep sleep state, it withdraws completely. At this stage, the primary consciousness, superior consciousness, which is always present as a substratum is left alone to experience and enjoy all by itself the solitude of the deep sleep state. Swami says that while the primary consciousness is the basis for I, or what Krishna in the Gita referred to as the self, the secondary consciousness is the basis for I, or what may also be called the lower self or the body. The I consciousness is dominant in the waking state, less so in the dream state, and disappears completely in the deep sleep state. The I consciousness, on the other hand, is always present, but because of the dominance of the I feeling, stays eclipsed except in the deep sleep state. It is interesting to note that as one wakes up from deep sleep, The I feeling progressively grows from nothing into something dominant. This is the evolution phase of the I consciousness. Incidentally, the dominance of the I is nothing but the assertion of the ego. The involution phase occurs when one sinks from wakefulness into deep sleep via the dream state. On that occasion, the I feeling progressively dissolve into nothing. Thus, the deep sleep state is spoken of as a causal state, it being the cause for the other states, that is, the dream and the waking states which evolve from it. Figure 2. This figure schematically portrays the transformation from the deep sleep state to the waking state and vice versa. The former leads to the evolution of I feeling or ego, and the latter to its dissolution. The deep sleep or the prajna state is the source from which wakefulness originates and the sink into which it dissolves. As would be discussed shortly, Vedanta strikes a parallel between this and what happens in the cosmos itself. The four important facts which emerge from the above analysis are: there are really two levels of consciousness, the primary associated to I and the secondary to small I. The primary consciousness is always there, whereas the secondary undergoes evolution or involution, as the case may be, when there is a sequential change of states. The I, capital I consciousness, though always present, is in ordinary persons eclipsed by the small I consciousness ego in the waking and the dream states. The deep sleep state is primary or causal. The other state emerge from it and dissolve into it. The constant and ever present self or the thread of I consciousness, previously referred to as primary consciousness, has to be carefully noted. As the great philosopher says, Shankar forcefully asserts, the self is consciousness even in deep sleep as well as in the waking and dream states, as its power of consciousness never ceases to exist and as it is changeless. Commenting on the three states of experiences, Swami observed: the wakeful state, Jagrata Avastha, is the state of normal consciousness and is concerned with the gross world of matter. It brings empirical knowledge of the phenomenal world acquired through sensations and perceptions. The dream state, Swapna Avastha, is concerned with the subtler aspects of human knowledge and experience. It carries with it the subtler impressions of the experiences of the waking state. In the third or the deep sleep state, Susupti, one is in an unconscious state as far as secondary consciousness is concerned, but the primary consciousness is very much operative as it is in other states as well. Swami refers to this state as a state of transcendental consciousness in which the dichotomy between grossness and subtlety disappears in superconsciousness, or what was referred to above as primary consciousness. He adds, reality thus has three main aspects, namely empirical reality, illusory reality, and the absolute reality. These three categories of human existence correspond to three levels of consciousness, which Jagrata, or the consciousness of wakefulness, Swapna, or the subconsciousness of dream, and Susupti, or the unconsciousness of deep slumber. Gleanings from the Mandukya Upanishad. Among the Upanishads, the Mandukya is one of the smallest with just 12 slokas or verses, but the Muktiko Upanishad hails the Mandukya as the quintessence of all the Upanishads. About it, Swami says, in the text of the Mandukya Upanishad, there are only 12 mantras verses. These 12 mantras contain the essence of all the Vedas. They tell you in an excellent manner the aspects of Brahma, the one and only Upanishad which can lead us to the knowledge of oneness or Advaita is Mandukya Upanishad. The Mandukya is relevant in the present context because it sheds much light on issues relating to the three states under discussion. Its greatest contribution is the enunciation of a one-to-one correspondence between the three states mentioned and three states of macrocosm, besides linking it to all to Om. The Mandukya says all this world is the syllable Om. Its further explanation is this: the past, the present, the future, everything is just Om, and whatever transcends the three divisions of time, that too is just Om. For truly everything is Brahma, and the self within Atma is also Brahma. Mandukya then goes on to describe what it calls the four quarters of the self. Says Sankara has pointed out that these four quarters are like the four quarters or parts of a coin. Each quarter resolve into the next, and when the three resolve into the fourth emerges as the whole coin. In the same way, there are three states associated with the self or experienced by it, one leading on to the other. Together, they lead to the fourth, which represents the totality of experience. The various quarters are identified by Mandukya as follows. First, there is the waking state where there is outward cognition. This is associated with an entity called Vasnavara. Vasvanara. Next comes the dream state where outward cognition is replaced by inward cognition, the associated entity now being Tejasa, whereas in the waking state, gross objects are experienced. In the dream state only, subtle objects are experienced. Next comes the deep sleep state in which there are no desires or dreams. One might think that cognition is totally suspended, but Mandukya holds that there is a cognition in this state also, but of a different kind. A transcendent cognition which unifies all experiences into a single state of bliss. This is also referred to as self cognition or the cognition by the self. The entity associated with the state is called prajna, which some refer to as super consciousness. And now Mandukya climbs rapidly to dizzy heights. It says, "This is the Lord of all, their knower, their inner controller, their source, their origin, and dissolution." The fourth Turiya, the wise say, is not inwardly cognitive nor outwardly cognitive, nor cognitive both wise, neither is it an indefinite mass of cognition, nor collective cognition, nor non cognition. It is unseen, unrelated, inconceivable, uninferable, unimaginable, indescribable. It is the essence of the one self cognition common to all states of consciousness, all phenomena sees in it. It is peace, it is bliss, it is non duality, it is the self, and it is to be realized. This Atma self is to be identified with Om, where Om is considered as a single syllable. When Om is considered as composed of parts, the quarters of the Atma are to be identified with the parts and the parts with the quarters. The parts of Om are A, U, and M. Vasunara, who has the waking state for his field, is the letter A, the first part of Om, because they, that is Vasunara and A, are both all pervasive and have a beginning. One who knows this obtains verily all desires and becomes the first. Tejasa, who has the dream state for his field, is the letter U, the second part of Om, because it is both superior and in between A and M. One who knows this becomes great in knowledge and the equal of all. No one ignorant of Brahma is born in his family. Prajna, whose field is deep sleep, is the letter M, the third pan of Om, because they, that is Prajna and the letter M, are like the measure and the end of the others. One who knows this measures everything by his knowledge and comprehends everything within himself. The syllable Om in its partless, that is soundless aspect is the fourth transcendental divide of phenomenal existence, supreme bliss and non-dual. Thus the syllable Om is verily the self Atma. He who knows this merges his self in the self. Let us digest this heavy offering. The first point, of course, is that there is a unity of consciousness in the three states, namely waking, dream, and deep sleep. Whereas ordinary philosophers are content with an explanation of the world from the waking standpoint alone, Vedanta refuses to be so constrained. The next important point is that there is a self which cognizes all the various states and their experiences and persists throughout as the permanent and constant witness. This permanent and constant witness, which does not undergo any change despite changes in the states, is the Atma. There is yet another subtle point which Swami Tyagistananda highlights. He says that both in the waking state and in the dream state, the person having the experiences is none other than the ego of that person. For in Vedanta, there is no real thing as a person, there being only the self, Atma. Recall the Janka story. Personality is a claim of the body engineered by the resident ego, as Tyagistananda puts it. The subject which persists through all the vicissitudes of age, education, etc., of the waking state disappears and another takes his place in the dream state. The waking subject is thus not permanent. This ephemeral subject is known as the ego. The same is the fate of the ego of dream state also too. That also disappears in the dreamless sleep. Neither the subject nor the object of the waking and the dream states remain in deep sleep. But the deep sleep state is not one of emptiness. In this state, there is an entity which is not only experiencing the total absence of all phenomena but also bliss, happiness. Indeed, without the existence of such an entity, one cannot ever in retrospect say, "Oh, I had a sound and dreamless sleep." No, recall is possible unless there has been an experience first. And the entity having that experience is, of course, the self, always present, though not so evident. Swami Tyagistananda adds, the self experiencing happiness and cognizing the absence of all phenomena in deep sleep is a fact which one cannot get over. Since the whole world dissolves as it were in this deep sleep and emerges when one comes back from it to the dream or waking state, we have to conclude that it remains in a latent form in the dreamless sleep consciousness and is projected again at the time of re manifestation. it must be stressed here that there is nothing very spiritual about deep sleep. If at all it was considered in the above analysis, it was merely to interfere the existence of what has been referred to as primary consciousness. As Vedantins say, the bliss of deep sleep is merely quiescent and negative in character. Can one experience such bliss while awake? That issue comes up shortly. But in anticipation, it can be said, as Bhagwan Baba has pointed out many times, that one is able to enjoy pure bliss in the deep sleep state because one has no body consciousness while in that state. Absence of body consciousness is thus the key to eternal bliss. Next, we consider Om and its relationship to Om. Mandukya says that Om is made up of three letters A, U, and M. These are like the three quarters of a coin. Together they lead to the fourth quarter, which is Om. What does this mean? The letters A, U, and M are associated with the three states. Now, no sound can be produced without opening the mouth, and the first sound produced on opening the mouth is A. Ah, hence, it is all pervasive. Mandukya gives a due importance by maintaining that Vesvanara, the presiding entity of the waking state, is all pervasive in the sense that our knowledge of all states comes to us by reasoning and analysis during the waking state. As we shall later see, Baba also stresses the importance of the experiences of the waking state. The dream state relates entirely to the world of the mind, dealing as it does with subtle entities. The dream state is held to be superior to that which deals only with the gross, namely the waking state. The mind, which is the thinking aspect in manifested beings of Brahma or the Supreme Being, is, as already noted, extraordinarily powerful. Mandukya links the dream state to the letter U. Next comes the deep sleep state prajna, which Mandukya first relates to M because when the syllable AUM is uttered, the first two elements merge into M, just as the waking and the dream states merge into deep sleep. Mandukya also compares the prajna state to a measure, meaning a volumetric measure or a vessel of fixed size into which grain is first filled and from which it is then poured out to the customer. The prajna state is compared to a measure between because the waking and the dream states subside in it and then emerge from it later. Figuratively, A, U, and M may be compared respectively to the body, mind, and the heart, and the implication of the statement that A, U, and M together resolve into the fourth quarter Om means that the body, mind, head, and the heart must together lead a person to the Atma. In the language of Gita, Karma Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga lead one to liberation. Bhagwan Baba on Om. Before proceeding further, it is only appropriate that Swami's all important pronouncement on AUM are highlighted. He has referred to this subject on many an occasion, and a selection of his divine observations follow. Indestructibility is the form of God, and for this indestructible God, AUM is the name. AUM, the primordial word, contains the essence of all the Vedas and is source of all Shastras. It provides the basis for the core of all religious teaching and eclectic knowledge. AUM is the primordial Akshara, the basis for the core of all Akshara letter, and all other letters are its derivatives. The divine letter AUM represents Prabrahma, the Supreme Lord. AUM is comprised of three syllables A, U, and M, each of which has profound connotations. AUM is the primordial word which gives life, Chaitanya, to all other words. All the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the Puranas epics have extolled the Parnava AUM in many ways. It is not possible for anyone to fully cognize or even describe the integral form of the sacred word AUM. It is an integral word that stands for the divine. It is the audible form of Brahma, Sabd Brahmahi. It pervades the universe of animate and inanimate beings. Chara Charmai. It is resplendent divine light, Jyotirmai. It is speech, Vangmai. It is eternal delight, Nitya Anandmai. It is transcendental, Prataparmai. It is the mother of Maya itself, the creative consciousness of Brahma, Maya, Mayamai, and auspiciousness, Srimai. Om thus has the foregoing eight divine treasures Aishwaryas. It is divinely precious and should be recognized as the name of God. In the Ramayana, Lakshmana, Bharata, and Satrughna exhibit the qualities associated respectively with the three syllables A, U, and M of Om. Om itself is personified in Rama. Om is a name of God which can find universal acceptance. The Christians say Amen in their prayers every day. It is only a different form of Om. AUM has universal applicability. It cuts across all barriers of time, place, religion, and culture and can be uttered by all. Life is a mighty river. Om is the boat that takes you across the river. Chant the Parnava Om within you repeatedly. The Vedas declare that he who chants Om fully, comprehending its meaning, will merge with Brahma. One might wonder what fully comprehending means. It implies, among other things, that while one is chanting, one is conscious that everything around is really a manifestation of God. Consider as an example the sounds of nature, the chirping of the sparrows, the call of the cuckoo, the buzz of the bees, the rustle of leaves, the gurgling of the brook, the roar of the waves in the ocean, the howl of the gale, the clatter of thunder, why even the why even the croaks of a frog, all these are the sounds emanating from creation and therefore constitute Om. Thus, when we hear the sounds of nature, we must actually feel that we are hearing the voice of God. As Swami often says, God can and should also be perceived as sound. Nada Brahman, that is Brahman as sound or Nada, and so that we do not forget the importance of Om. He adds that Om is God's telephone number. Atma, causal, subtle, gross, micro. Brahma, causal, subtle, gross, macro. Figure 3. This figure is presented in anticipation of ideas to be discussed shortly and is intended to highlight the unity of the microcosm and the macrocosm. We have seen that the individual has three states of awareness. The fourth transcendental state, if it can be called that, is the Atma. As we shall soon see, there exist in the macrocosm two three states corresponding to those of individual. The fourth transcendental state approached from the viewpoint of the macrocosm is Brahma. However, at this level, the distinction between the micro and the macrocosm ceases to exist. Thus, Brahma and the Atma refer to one and the same, including the phenomenal world has been declared as the form of Am or Brahma. In other words, the world is God or Om manifested. However, Mandukya takes care to reiterate that Brahma is not merely what we see outside as objects, people, etc., but also the self inside each and every one of us. So, at the transcendental level, the equality is established. Brahma is equal to Atma is equal to self. An equality contained in the statement I am Atma Brahma, one of the four famous aphorisms or Mahavakyas, great statements of the Upanishads. This particular aphorism means Aham, I, is the same as the Atma, which is the same as Brahma and occurs in the Athrayana Veda. Looked at another way, the above equation relates to the micro and macrocosm because Atma, self, is an entity one normally associates with an individual, whereas Brahma is regarded as the foundation of the universe, but says the Upanishad. The two foundations are not distinct from each other, rather, they are one and the same. The constant theme of Vedanta. To put it differently, from the inward point of view of an individual, the ultimate entity is the Atma, whereas from an external point of view, it is Brahma. But the two are the same. The inside is outside and the outside is inside. Incidentally, the other three Mahavakyas are number one, Prajanam Brahma, meaning prajna or awareness, and Brahma are synonymous, which occurs in the Rig Veda. 2. Tattvam Asi means that thou art, which occurs in the Sam Veda. Third, Aham Brahmasmi, meaning I am Brahma, which occurs in the Yajur Veda. The above statement that Brahma equals Atma says that the foundations of the universe and of the individual are one and the same, or in other words, individual primary consciousness is the same as universal consciousness. But what about the states experienced by the individual? Are there corresponding states in the macrocosm? Indeed, they are. Let us start with the waking state. In this state, the individual has his or her experiences in the objective universe. Swami refers to this as Bhutaksha, Bhut, Bhutakasha, which in popular language means the gross world. If Vaishnava is the Vesvanara is the presiding deity for the individual in the waking state. The corresponding entity for the Bhutakasa is Virata. Likewise, to the dream and the deep sleep state also corresponds appropriate worlds with their own presiding deities. All this finally enables one to draw up correspondence as in table 1. Comparison between the micro and the macrocosm in the three states. Waking state, body, individual or microcosm, physical state, A of AUM, universe, Bhutaksha, gross world. Empirical reality, dream state, Vesvanara, mental state, Virata, Chitakasha. Empirical reality, mind, Vesvanara, U of Om, Virat, subtle world. Empirical reality, illusory reality, Vesvanara, Tejasa, Virata, Hiranyagarbha. Empirical reality, deep sleep state, Vasamnara, primary conscious state, Virata, Chidakasha. Empirical reality, life, Vasamnara, M of AUM, Virata, causal world. Absolute empirical reality, absolute reality, Vasamnara, Prajna, Virata, Iswara. In the above, Hiranyagarbha is the cosmic mind, while Iswara is God, who is the cause, who is the source from which the world has come and into whom the world finally dissolves. Vedanta argues that for an individual, the whole world dissolves as it were in the deep sleep state and re-emerges when one comes back to the waking state. On the other hand, the scriptures speak of God as the entity from which the world comes and into which the world dissolves. The argument is therefore advanced that since this description of Ishvara tallies with prajna or the background state of superconsciousness from which the world is projected again on awakening, Ishvara and prajna are not different. One might wonder why God Ishvara is not equated with Brahma. That is because Brahma is totally attributeless, whereas Ishvara defined here has attributes. Ishvara is of course an aspect of Brahma. Krishna explains the difference in chapter 15 of the Gita. In passing, it might be noted that as one progresses from the gross to the causal world, not only do the successive worlds get more and more subtle, but also incredible vaster. Swami on the micro macro intercomparisons. In his characteristic manner, Swami has shed amazingly clear light on the subject. The micro is small while the macro is huge. Let us make the micro to refer to an individual and the macro as infinity. Thus when according to Swami, body into infinity is equal to universe, the cosmic form, that is the physical form of God. Mind into infinity is equal to cosmic mind. Life into infinity is equal to God Isvara. The cosmic form is what has been referred to earlier as Virata, and the cosmic mind, of course, is the Hiranyagarbha. Swami adds. The Virata and Hiranyagarbha are not distinct entities located in specific places. They are immanent in man. Even for an ordinary individual, the mind is the source of creation. Suppose one wants to paint a picture, the idea of painting a picture originates in the mind. The subject for the picture originates in the mind, and so also the view to be painted, the choice of colors, etc. Vedanta holds that when Isvara creates the world, there is first a corresponding thought Sankalpa in the cosmic mind, which is the mind of Ishvara. As Swami says, the world is a reflection of God, the cause is God, and the effect is the world. Where the individual is concerned, the heart the heart minus the spiritual heart minus is nothing other than an element of Hiranyagarbha. Although the Hiranyagarbha is a subtle entity, the scriptures speak of it as a golden egg. The literal translation of Hiranyagarbha is golden womb, possibly to convey that the world did not come from a womb, as Krishna has declared during the summer course in Vrindavan in 1991. Swami materialized the golden egg and holding it before a dazed and spellbound audience spoke at length on the significance as well as the sanctity of the Hiranyagarbha. On another occasion he said, He, the Hiranyagarbha, is the source of all kinds of knowledge, ethical, spiritual, physical, scientific and social. The entire creation emerged from Hiranyagarbha at the beginning. Hiranyagarbha is in the form of an oval-shaped egg. Hiranyagarbha is the primary source of all living beings. It is Hiranyagarbha who endowed all these beings with the power of discriminating between the eternal and the ephemeral, between what should be sought and what should be renounced, between what ought to be done and what ought not to be done. What is the supreme knowledge that man needs to make his life purposeful? Hiranyagarbha offered a man Hiranyagarbha offered to man the knowledge he needed for this purpose. Thus is the primary activity of Hiranyagarbha. So I conclude this video at this stage. Next video will continue on the same topic, that is the real nature of Atma. Namaste my dear friends. Thank you.